You seem distant, cold, almost completely checked out of the relationship. The man who once couldn't get enough of her, who shared his biggest dreams, now barely seems to be present. The conversations have gone from deep to shallow. The affection has all but vanished, and a silence has grown between you that feels heavier than any argument ever could. On the surface, it really looks like you don't care anymore. For her, it feels like a slow, painful rejection, a quiet announcement that you're done. But what if that emotional shutdown isn't a sign that you're done? What if it's actually a desperate act of self-preservation? In this video, we're getting into the male psyche to show how this behaviour, this seeming lack of care, is often a complex defence mechanism. It's a sign that you're struggling, not that you've stopped loving her. We're going to explore the hidden reasons men pull away, and they're probably not what you think. Figuring this out is the first step to navigating this painful space, not by trying to fix things overnight, but by understanding your own internal world to find clarity through the confusion. So, if you've ever felt the need to pull away and shut down, stick around, because what we're about to uncover might just change everything. Let's start with one of the most common, yet misunderstood, reasons you might pull away. A state that psychologists call emotional flooding. Think about your computer when it has way too many programs running at once. The fan starts whirring, the machine gets hot, and if you don't start closing some tabs, it's going to freeze or shut down completely to prevent a total system crash. That's pretty much what happens to your nervous system during moments of intense emotional stress. When a conversation gets heated, when there's conflict, or when you just feel overwhelmed by pressure, your body can flip into a state of high alert known as fight or flight. For a lot of men, the response isn't to fight, but to take flight. Not by storming out of the room, but by retreating inward. This is the shutdown. It's an automatic protective response where your body and mind just disconnect from the feelings to stay safe. She experiences this as you becoming cold, unresponsive, or putting up a wall. You might give one-word answers, stare blankly, or just say, "I don't want to talk about it." For her, this feels like a deliberate choice to reject her. It feels like you're punishing her, like you don't care enough to even try. But from your side of things, it's the only way to stop a complete meltdown. You're so overwhelmed by everything that's happening emotionally that your brain can't process any more information. To keep the conversation going at that point feels impossible, like trying to pour more water into a glass that's already overflowing. This response comes from a mix of biology and how society raises boys. From a young age, many of us are taught to push our emotions down. We hear things like, "Be a man, toughen up, or don't cry," which teaches us that feelings, especially the vulnerable ones, are a sign of weakness or a loss of control. A lot of us just aren't given the tools to handle complex emotional situations. So, when you're faced with intense emotions, hers or your own, your internal system flags it as a threat. The shutdown is your nervous system's emergency brake. You aren't thinking, "I'm going to ignore her to make her upset." It's more likely an internal panic that sounds like, "I can't handle this right now. If I say anything, it'll be the wrong thing. It's just going to make it worse. I need to get out of this before I explode or fall apart." That silence isn't a weapon, it's a shield. You feel that by showing no emotion, you're actually trying to protect the relationship, stopping yourself from saying something in the heat of the moment that you can't take back. So the next time you feel yourself shutting down during a tough conversation, try to pause and see it through this new lens. She isn't seeing a lack of love, she's seeing a system overload. You aren't indifferent, you're inundated. This isn't the end of your caring, it's the limit of your capacity in that exact moment. The wall you're building isn't to keep her out, but to keep yourself from shattering. For so many of us, our sense of identity and self-worth is deeply connected to our ability to provide, protect, and solve problems. Society conditions us to be the fixer. In a relationship, this shows up as an intense, often unspoken pressure to make your partner happy. You want to be her hero, her rock, the one who can make it all okay. But what happens when you can't? What happens when the problems are messy, when her unhappiness feels like a puzzle you just can't solve, or when you feel like you're the source of her pain? In those moments, you don't just feel like you're failing at a task, you feel like you are failing as a man, as a partner, as a person. And that feeling of failure is excruciating. It triggers a deep toxic shame that can be completely paralyzing. When you start to suspect that you just don't have what it takes to make her happy, you shrink back. Your withdrawal is a direct reaction to this crushing sense of inadequacy. It can feel safer for you to just retreat and stop trying than to keep trying and repeatedly face that painful feeling of falling short. If you don't engage, you can't get it wrong. If you pull away, you can't disappoint her again. You might see this pop up after you've had the same argument over and over. She brings up a need that isn't being met, and you just feel yourself becoming distant. From her point of view, she's trying to connect and solve a problem together. From yours, you're hearing one more piece of evidence that you're a failure. You might have even said things like, "It seems like I can never make you happy," or "Nothing I do is ever good enough." These aren't just defensive lines. They are windows into your soul, revealing a profound sense of defeat. And this fear of failure is often at its worst when you care the most. As the relationship deepens and the stakes get higher, your fear of messing it all up gets bigger. The more you love her, the more her happiness matters to you, and the more devastating it feels when you think you're the one causing her pain. Your distance isn't a sign that you're feeling less. It's often a sign that your feelings have become so strong that the fear of failing her is just too much. You might escape into work, video games, or hobbies, places where you feel competent and in control. These are worlds where the rules are clear and you can get a measurable win, which is a huge contrast to the messy, complicated emotional world of a relationship, where you feel like you're constantly losing. This withdrawal isn't some passive-aggressive punishment, it's a passive act of self-protection. You're retreating from the battlefield of the relationship where, in your mind, you've already lost the war. The man who seems like he doesn't care anymore might actually be the man who cares so much that the thought of failing one more time is simply too much to bear. Your silence isn't the sound of apathy. It's the sound of your own perceived inadequacy. Every single person walks into a relationship carrying the invisible baggage of their past. For men, who are often told not to process their emotional pain, this baggage can be especially heavy and well hidden. When you shut down emotionally, it's often because something in the relationship today has accidentally stepped on the landmine of a past wound. These wounds can come from anywhere. Maybe it was a childhood where expressing needs led to punishment or being ignored. Maybe it's the lingering pain of a past relationship where your vulnerability was used against you. It could be any experience that taught you a brutal lesson. Being open is dangerous, and connection just leads to pain. Because of that, your nervous system learned a core rule. Feeling is unsafe. In the early fun stages of a relationship, these wounds can lie dormant. But as you get closer and intimacy deepens, the perceived risk gets bigger. To you, real vulnerability can feel like standing on the edge of a cliff. The very closeness she is longing for might be the exact trigger that sets off your oldest fears. You pull away not because you want to leave her, but because some deep part of you believes you need to retreat to survive. This is often where attachment styles come into play. If you have an avoidant attachment style, for example, you learned early on that caregivers were unreliable or overwhelming. So as an adult, you equate deep intimacy with a loss of independence or the threat of being smothered. As your partner asks for more closeness, your internal alarms go off and you pull back to feel safe and like yourself again. You might even recognize this pattern. Every time you share a moment of true deep connection, you seem to pull away in the days that follow. She's left totally confused, wondering what she did wrong. But she did nothing wrong. In fact, she did everything right. You got closer, and for someone with these old wounds, closeness is the trigger. Dissociation is another defense mechanism born from trauma. It's a mental escape when a situation feels too emotionally intense. If you grew up in chaotic or frightening situations, you might have learned to mentally check out just to cope. Now, a tense argument or a heavy conversation can trigger that exact same response. You're not really there with her in the room anymore. You've retreated to a numb, distant place in your mind where nothing can touch you. That vacant stare isn't a sign of disrespect. It's a deeply ingrained survival strategy kicking into gear. And remember, this isn't a conscious choice. These are deeply embedded automatic reactions. You're not thinking, my ex hurt me, so I'm going to be distant with my partner now. It's a subconscious, gut-level response. The body remembers the pain even when the conscious mind isn't making the connection. When you say, I'm fine, but your eyes are distant and your body is tense, you are a man at war with himself. One part of you desperately wants to connect with her, but another, more primal part is screaming that it's not safe. The wall you put up is a fortress that was built a long time ago, designed to protect a younger, more vulnerable version of yourself. You're not shutting her out, you're shutting down to protect your own broken pieces. Now, if any of this is starting to resonate, if a light bulb is going off and you're seeing your own situation in a new light, take a second to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We get into these topics every week, not just to understand the psychology, but to find real paths toward clarity and healing. Understanding these internal reasons is a huge piece of the puzzle, but it's only half the picture. The other half is figuring out what happens between the two of you, the destructive dance that I call the vicious cycle of disconnection. It starts with your withdrawal. For any of the reasons we just talked about, you're flooded, feel like a failure, or an old wound gets triggered, you pull back, you get quiet and distant. Now, how does she experience this? She feels abandoned, rejected, maybe even a little insecure. Her sense of connection feels threatened. Her brain, which is wired to seek connection, goes into a mini panic. So she does what feels natural. She tries to close that gap. She pursues. She asks, "What's wrong? Are you okay? Did I do something? Why won't you talk to me?" From her perspective, she is showing that she cares. She's trying to fix the problem. But from your already overwhelmed, shame-filled perspective, her pursuit feels like more pressure. Her questions feel like criticism. Her attempts to connect feel like an attack. This just confirms your fear that you're failing her, or it makes the emotional overload even worse. And what do? You withdraw even further. The wall gets higher. This, of course, makes her panic and sense of rejection skyrocket, which makes her pursue you even more urgently. You retreat more deeply, and the cycle just spins, faster and faster, pushing you both into opposite corners. You end up feeling chronically pressured and misunderstood, and she ends up feeling chronically lonely and unloved. This is the classic pursuer-distancer dynamic that relationship experts talk about. You're both trapped in a dance where each person's natural reaction just makes the situation worse. You're not withdrawing because you're a bad guy, and she's not pursuing because she's needy. You're both just reacting to what feels like a threat. For you, the threat of being overwhelmed and failing. For her, the threat of being abandoned. Breaking this cycle doesn't start with her changing. It starts with you understanding the dance and choosing to change your own steps. So, where does all of this leave you? Probably feeling misunderstood, locked down, and frustrated. The biggest temptation is to wait for her to magically understand what's going on inside your head. But the truth is, you can't force her to read your mind. You can't make her understand your trauma, your fears, or your nervous system. That journey of understanding starts with you. But you're not powerless here. Your power is in shifting your focus from wishing she would change to empowering yourself. And that begins with a new approach. First, understand her reaction. The most powerful thing you can do is to stop seeing her attempts to connect as a personal attack. It's not about pressuring you. It's about her internal struggle with feeling abandoned. It's a defense mechanism, not a judgment on your character. When you can really let that sink in, her pursuit starts to lose its power to overwhelm you. It's still hard, yes, but it's no longer an attack. It's a reflection of her fear. Second, change your step in the dance. Now that you understand the vicious cycle, you can choose to stop stonewalling. When you feel yourself start to pull away, instead of shutting down completely, communicate your need for space. I know it feels like the last thing you want to do, but it's the only way to stop the cycle. Say something calm and reassuring like, "I'm feeling overwhelmed right now and need to take a break. I'm not abandoning this conversation, but I need 20 minutes to clear my head." This tells her you are not a threat. You are an ally. You're de-escalating the situation and creating the safety needed for real connection to grow. Third, share your needs without placing blame. When you're ready to talk, use I statements that focus on how you feel, not on what she did. Instead of saying, "You're always pressuring me," which feels like an attack, try, "I feel overwhelmed and shut down when the conversation gets intense." This invites empathy instead of defensiveness. You're just sharing your experience, not delivering a verdict on hers. Finally, and this is the most important part, turn your focus back to you. Your emotional well-being cannot be dependent on her getting it right. Reinvest all that energy you are spending feeling misunderstood back into your own life. What are your passions, your hobbies, your friendships? What makes you feel alive and whole, all on your own? Fill your own cup. When your sense of self-worth comes from within, you can approach the relationship from a place of wholeness, not need. You can offer connection without it feeling like a crushing obligation, and you can find peace whether she is able to meet you there or not. Understanding the psychology of why you shut down isn't about making excuses. It's about arming yourself with a deeper compassion for her and, more importantly, for yourself. It lets you understand the scared little boy behind the cold, silent man, and it empowers you to stop fighting a battle that was never yours to win, and instead start nurturing the one person you have full control over, you. The goal isn't just to save the relationship, it's to find a stronger, more peaceful and more empowered you.